Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast that's dedicated to talking mental health with people that have come into my life at different points and I now call friends. So today I'm really happy to introduce somebody that is so special in my world of mental health and helping me to sort of find this pathway and this journey that I've been on. Aimi Maunders, welcome to this conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You're more than welcome. So as I always do with these podcasts, I'll introduce Aimi as I know Aimi, so you get a little bit of an understanding from my perspective, and then we'll ask Aimi, please, to introduce yourself and what you've been doing. So Aimi and I first met, oh gosh, many years ago, or probably 8 or 9 years ago, I guess, at a wedding. I think that was the first time that we'd met. I've known Amy's husband for a bit longer. We've become very good friends, and it's just a wonderful sort of relationship that sort of, flourished from there, I guess, blossomed from there. So in 2016, when I was looking for alternative opportunities with my new business, Amy owned a company called Memia, and with her sister Emma, and they gave me an opportunity to come in to do some consulting work with them, which was a short-term assignment that turned into 2.5 years of wonderful working together, helping support the sort of the objectives of that business, which has just been amazing, and focusing on mental health. Amy is a mother. She is a wonderful human being. She's just one of the nicest and kindest people that I know, along with her husband, Paul, who gets a shout out on this podcast as well. And I'm so happy to have the opportunity to sit down with you, Amy, for a little while to have a chat about mental health and all things around that. So welcome. If you want to introduce yourself, that'd be amazing.
Oh, thank you. That was a very lovely introduction.
I try.
As you say, yes, I am owner of Happiful, and that is a company dedicated to mental health. We run happiful.com, we have a Happiful app, we have our own podcast, I Have, and we've got several directories that all try to connect people with mental health support and wellness. So that's my job. As Matt said, I'm also a mother, so I have 2 lovely daughters who are 6 and 8, and are a full-time job in themselves, so they keep me busy. And on the side, I'm also training to be a counsellor, so I'm in my 3rd year of training, which is really important to me, both in my personal life and in what I want to do in the future. So yeah, busy and lots going on at the moment. And Christmas as well.
Yeah, Christmas around the corner, and you're wearing a lovely Christmas jumper. For anybody that's watching this, you'll see the Christmas jumper. For anybody that's listening, it's a red jumper with some tinsel. Awesome. Oh yeah, so just reindeers and things going on. So fabulous. Thanks, Amy. Lovely to see you. So the big question of this series is around mental health. That's what we're here to talk about. Can you give our listeners and the people that are watching this some insights into your journey with mental health and some of those motivational changes that happen for you as well?
Yeah, mine's been a long journey. So for me, it started when I was 11, and I experienced a short period of bullying at school. And it it didn't take over my life, but it was enough to trigger some things. And about 6 months later, I started to experience OCD, which I didn't know was OCD at the time. And I was very conscious of change and how things change. And it was almost like a way to try and control that change within my life. So I would check things and I would do things a certain number of times, and it became quite a big part of who I was and part of my identity. And then when I was about 13, 14, and we got our first, awful computer at home that had that big back on it and, took 10 minutes to load, I managed to somehow find a website that explained the symptoms of what I was experiencing. And it was then, the first time I realized, okay, this isn't just me. This is actually something that's happening to millions of people around the world. So that was a big relief for me.
Yeah.
And as I grew up and got older, and I met my husband Paul when I was only 18, and although it had gotten a lot better at that point, it wasn't something that was sort of controlling my life. Anxiety was still there, so it all stems from this anxious part of me that's been there for a long time. And had a conversation with Paul about it, and his acceptance and support with it really was one of those big moments of, oh, okay, I can actually be this, I can have this as part of me, and it's acceptable and it's okay. And funnily enough, I'd already started the business at this point. So Emma came to me with the idea for the counselling directory, and we decided, her coming out of university, me coming out of college, that we would create this directory for people who needed support with their mental health. And you know, it's very funny to look at the journey and how they sort of coincided, and you know, how I'd had all this stuff going on and then ended up with a business that, you know, that supports it. It's very ironic and, you know, meant to be. And our whole then journey has been about, you know, these websites and making mental health a subject that people talk about, making professional help with counsellors more accessible. And that's what I think we've done for the UK. You know, we've created that bridge between, it's that, you know, if you don't want to go to the NHS, or you're not able to go through the NHS, or you want longer term counselling that's not available for you, there's another option. And it's, yes, you know, you have to pay for it, but there is that other option. And then in about, when was it, 2013, I had my first daughter, and I actually hadn't had any counselling by this point, and I really should have done. I really should have done probably from about the age of 18, but it was just so different then, and my life was so different, and I wouldn't have been able to afford to have private counselling at that point anyway. So as my daughter was born, let's just say life kind of exploded. My emotional being exploded, and I realized very quickly that I needed some support in helping almost find the pieces and piece everything back together.
Yeah.
So I had counselling in 2013, and that was huge for me. It was, you know, it was so eye-opening about, it was just that moment of, oh wow, counselling really does work, thank God.
Yeah.
This business that's been,
Yeah.
you know, helping people find counselling for all these years, and it was that, oh my goodness, you know, this is actually real and does have a massive impact on your life if you're able to have it and you're able to really throw yourself into it. So that was a huge eye-opener for me, and I got to a good enough point where I actually decided I was ready to have another baby quite quickly. So we had another baby, and yeah, she's now 6. And when she was about 2, maybe, I decided to go back into counselling. You know, 1 child is a game changer. 2 is,
yeah,
it's a lot, and especially when they're so close together in age as well. So I went back and I decided I needed some support with that. And it was during that 6 months that I experienced the biggest transition. I really felt like, you know, I understood who I was as a person, and even beyond that. And it just, everything sort of became very, I became very aware of everything. It was a huge transition for me. And, you know, I'll always be grateful to my counsellor for helping me find that. And it's actually the reason that I'm now training to be a counsellor, because I realised what was possible and what, you know, what you could do, which is, it's the relationship with the counsellor. And, you know, it's not that the counsellor did anything, it's that relationship that you create with them. And that's what I want. I want that relationship with people. I want to provide that so that they can experience their own version of what I experience. So, you know, I still get anxious and I still get down days, you know, and it's a journey for life. It's not, oh, you know, you have this and you're feeling fantastic every day. I feel like I have the tools and I have the awareness and the, you know, the ability now to recognize when it's becoming too much. I actually said to my husband this morning, I'm reaching capacity.
Okay, yeah, that's good.
I'm reaching capacity.
Yeah.
And the fact that I can actually say those words to another person now is a big deal for me. So before that would have been all internalized. But now I can actually start that conversation and say, I'm reaching capacity, I'm feeling anxious. The kids are breaking up from school in a couple of days. I may explode. This is usually when I would run off to a retreat sometime.
Not able to, yeah.
And I can't. So I'm going to have to find another way, which will be a very good learning lesson for me, to find another way to be in my household, you know, with everyone, with 2 very powerful children, shall we say, or very vocal children, and to find my way, you know, within that unit. And but it's the difference now is that I'm able to recognize it and able to do something with it rather than just sit and let it be buried inside of me. So that's the, you know, that's the that's the journey of counselling. Is
Yeah. I've always found your story really fascinating, and your journey. And 2005 was when you launched Memia, and 15 years later you've got this successful business, which is now rebranded as Happiful, and it's very much sort of in the public domain now. People know it, recognize it. The magazine is just a phenomenal resource for promoting positive mental health, and I'm a massive fan and advocate of promoting positive mental health and the magazine and everything else, because I was part of that journey too in those moments. And what I love is that you have that sort of ability to use words around what's going on, so you can tell people when things aren't. I feel so comfortable in your presence, Amy, in terms of sort of talking. One thing we talked about in the pre of this recording was something that I shared with you that I've never told you, and I want to bring that into this recording because it's something I actually use in training, bizarrely, right? Well, not bizarrely, but I use it because it was such a poignant piece for me, and you helped me without ever knowing that you'd helped me to address a serious anxiety trigger, which was through a statement that happened to me when I lost my job in January of 2016. And I met with you in May of 2016, and you said, come and do some work with us, and we did. And later that year you said to me the quote, or the sentence, which was, can I borrow you for a minute? And it was a trigger for me, which you didn't know. And you asked me to go into a meeting room with you, which was a trigger again, because it was the same sort of, the memories start flooding back. And I always remember feeling horrible, horrendous, all these really negative thoughts coming through my head. And once I'd managed to sort of compose myself and think, okay, look, Amy's a friend, she's a nice person, Paul and Amy are lovely people, and it can't be bad. And my brain was saying it would be, and I went in, and you did this wonderful thing where you just said, Matt, we're really pleased with what's going on, we want to help, we want to do more work with you. And it just helped me to sort of readdress some of those bad things. And I'd never spoken about that until I started training people, and I wanted to use it as an example of a trigger, but I'd never told you.
yeah,
I'm sorry I never told you, but you know what, this is the perfect time to talk
yeah,
about it.
definitely. I think this is, it's such a moment, isn't it, in time. And at the time there we didn't have maybe the words to have that kind of conversation. Things in 4 years have changed quite dramatically for both of us, so it's lovely that we can come back to it, and you can share with me and with your listeners as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not about me, this conversation, of course, but I just want you to know that your work has helped so many people. And on behalf of all the millions of people that use the counselling directory and the other directories and the services that your brainchild, your and Emma's brainchild created, it's been phenomenal, and it would be remiss of me not to use this platform and this opportunity to say thank you. Really, to say, and even early into this podcast recording, to say thank you, because you are just an amazing person, family, and everything else. So kudos to you guys, straight up.
Very sweet. And not only has the website's helped all those people, but it's been a huge way to help me as well, and to make me move my journey forward, and to be a business owner. That in itself brings a whole host of learning points and development areas. So business has been a huge part of my life, and I hope that going forward that it will continue to be a voice and provide a message to people of hope and of trust and of support, and of it's okay to talk. That's the message, isn't it? It's actually not just okay, but it's really important.
Yeah
Really important to talk, because if you keep it all inside, and I have a lot of experience of being a person who keeps things inside and keeping things repressed, that's the thing. It's the secrets, it's the secrecy, it's the keeping it. Once you've shared it, there's that old saying, a problem shared is a problem halved, and I always brush that off and thought, what a load of rubbish, but it's so true. It allows another person to take that piece of you and to hold it and to support it, if you're lucky enough to have a supporting person that you can do that with. And if you don't have someone in your life that you can do that with, find a counselor, find somebody that you can open up to, even if it's just the little trickles at the beginning of the things that you feel comfortable saying. It's almost like a learning and an unfolding of you start with the little bits, and eventually you build up enough trust that you can share your deepest darkest secret and be okay with that.
Yeah.
at some point.
The interesting thing is, you're right. It's, I talk to people in the Samaritans world where I still do work and I'm listening volunteer. I talk to people in the mental health world, as you do within the sort of the counselling that you're, preparing yourself to deliver and support people through. And it is as simple as talking, isn't it? And it's having that wonderful ability, which is why I love these conversations with people, because you expose your reality of your story, which is the pieces of, and I'm sure there's a lot more in there, of course, there always is, but you're exposing pieces that people will go, oh my gosh, I felt that way, or I felt like this. And it's a wonderful gift that you give when you tell your story. I think that's how I feel about storytelling.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think what I like to say with my story is that for me, we've talked about the word mental health, and there's been a stigma attached to that for a long time.
Yeah.
For me, my mental health experience, issue, whatever you want to call it, has been the biggest opportunity in my life to grow and change and develop as a person, and to create a life that I fully live in and that I want to that I want to create the life that I want. It has been the thing. My anxiety, I experienced some post-traumatic stress after the delivery of my first child. Those things, those things that have been the biggest struggle, have almost been the platform for me to move my future forward in a better way, in a much more authentic way with who I really am.
Yeah, and you recognize it, and that's the thing I try to get across in this conversation is just recognize these things. Don't dismiss them as, oh yeah, it's just who I am, it's just what's going on with me, it's nothing important. Everybody, and I often talk to people, and I had a conversation only recently where somebody said, I've got all these problems, but you know what, other people have got more. And I said, hold on, we think about what you've just told me, go backwards. So I've got all these problems. I said, stop there.
Yeah.
That's not the next piece. We don't need the next piece. What we need to recognize is you've got all these problems. And I think, many people out there, right, when you see it, you've done it, you've lived with it. When you live with it in your head and you don't talk about it, we try to think that they're not going to be problems, and we try to push them to one side and think, well, actually, if I do this over here, it's going to help. You've gone headlong into a business that creates conversations to talk about mental health, right? Or what? Not even just mental health, but everything does link to mental health, doesn't it? Yeah, everything we do, every conversation, or because this conversation will either make you feel happy or sad. It will either make you feel enlightened, or it will make you feel vulnerable, or whatever. So I don't know.
The word, when we talk about mental health as well, I think most people have an idea that mental health is they have a picture of what that is. And actually, it could be, when I'm thinking about mental health, it's the whole spectrum. So it could be, actually, I wake up in the morning, I'm feeling low.
Yep.
And I'm not going to say that I've got a mental health condition, and I don't like to use that word, but I know that word is thrown around a lot, because I've got a low mood. Actually, that's where my mental health is today. My mental health is not feeling that great. I've got a low mood, or I'm feeling anxious in this moment. But it's the recognizing, as you said, it's the recognizing of the emotions that we're not taught to do as a society. And once you recognize what's underneath, those things. Yes, I'm feeling low. Okay, actually, no, I'm feeling really sad today.
Yep.
I'm feeling sad. There's an emotion, and we're not taught to do that at school, or by our parents, because they don't know how to do it either. And that's really what you learn in counselling, or when you start practicing meditation or self-awareness skills, that you start to understand what your feeling is, and just naming the feeling, being able to name the feeling is a game changer. Teach your children to name their feelings. That would be any parents out there, just teach them to name their feelings, and learn to name your own as well in front of your children, so that if we can help the next generation to start learning, recognizing and owning their own feelings, that's a huge nudge in the right direction for mental health everywhere.
Yeah, and I know you're really passionate about this, around the sort of the developmental side of children, and how we engage in this conversation of mental health, at that level, at that primary level, really, isn't it? And I think it has to be, because it's never been great. I take it to the other extreme and say, well, even managers of businesses have never been taught how to have conversations of mental health with their children. It's almost like a children-parent relationship, isn't it, in a lot of managers' perspectives?
Yeah.
It's across the whole societal piece. So in the school and the education, so obviously your children are of a younger age than my daughters. Mine are teenage young adults now, and I've seen a whole thing going on with that group, that age group? What are you seeing in their age groups that you potentially see are risks? Do you want to say some of those? Talk about some of that?
Oh, it's tricky. I know what's coming. I've seen with social media and everything, but I think that it's the resilience. If you can think that if children have got a foundation of resilience, then they're more capable of going in. You can think about what school you send them to, but actually it's how they feel about themselves. If you can I think if we can recognize as parents quite early on how our children feel about themselves and allow them almost to express those emotions without I think it's Brené Brown who says, shame, judgment, blame, without those things attached to them. So allowing them just to be okay with their own emotions, I think that foundational piece almost gives them the resilience. It puts them in contact with themselves rather than putting it out for other people to be the judges. So I think that if we can, that's what I work on with my kids. It's allowing them as much as possible, because I'm not a perfect parent by any means, and I
No.
I lose my rag.
I don't think there is a perfect parent role, is there? Is anybody a perfect parent? Come on, let's be honest. It's never going to be happening, is it? As much as we want to be like our child's going to be the superstar, there will always be things that happen.
Exactly, but in order for me to be able to offer that to my children, I have to also offer it to myself first. So if I'm not giving myself what I need, it's very difficult for me to give the children the space that they need to be able to express themselves and get it wrong and fail, and to be told it's okay to fail. Failure, I think, allowing them to fail allows them to have resilience. Again, I think if they grow from mine are 6 and 8, and if I can allow them to be who they are, express their emotions, and sort of almost have this foundational resilience, and then as they move into secondary school, which where I hear is the biggest transition, and was for me as well, that transition from primary to secondary is a big shift there. And it's almost like if you can help your children in that stage before the move, so that they've got those tools and that inner strength, shall we say. And if they know that you're there, that they can talk to you, then maybe that will give them a better starting point. You can't change the bullying, you can't change what happens at school, you can't change the things that will come for them, but it's almost about helping them and teaching them how to react and how to manage and cope. Realize that they are more than just those things. But it's difficult, it's really hard, and I'm training to be a counsellor, and I've got get taught how to do these things. It's not available, it's not widely available. It's not something we're taught as a society, which I wish we were.
Well, you know what? We need to move towards that, don't we? We need to have these ambitions, and it's that thought of saying, I've been through an experience, which is what you've been through. You did something positive with, the outcome of that experience, which was created a business that helped others. The ambition of your business is exactly the same as mine, in that we just want to help people. I want to help one person, and if this podcast helped one person, you know what, I feel like I'm doing a great job. That's how I feel, and it gives me that sort of value of spending an hour of doing this was well worth it. Same with and that's exactly what we should be doing. So when we talk about when we need to change the way we engage with our children, or we have conversations at school or the educational system, we have to move that, and we have to make that happen, don't we? Because with the environment of the current sort of situation with governments, it doesn't just happen. Very, very little happens, absolutely, but it's that movement, isn't it, we need to create.
And there is some movement. There are organisations, and I know other counsellors that go into schools and give talks, and there are lots of there's some really wonderful organisations who place volunteer counsellors in schools now. But it's those will only pick up the children who make it clear that there's an issue. The other 29 children in the class who also need those skills, we need to find a way as a society to bring that in. That's something I'd actually really like to be involved in my future. Not right now, because I've got,
of course, no.
I would really love to be part of that movement. I don't know how that looks yet, but I'm aware.
I think that the challenge we have, if you know, and I see it from a business perspective as well, with working with companies, you know, and everything actually looks the same. We just don't recognize it as being the same, whether it's at the school level, at university, at work. You know, the challenge is we don't engage in the conversation early enough. We're not proactive in the conversation. So you know, in that reality, what you've just outlined with one counsellor or a counsellor is they only get really involved when people are struggling.
Yeah.
When the child's struggling. Now, why would we want them? And that comes back to your point of resilience. In the workplace, the only time people access EAP systems, employee assistance programs, is when they're struggling. Why wouldn't they proactively get involved in conversations about things before they ever need to get there, or they know they need to get there? And it's exactly the same across, I think, every part of our lives, every generation.
It takes leadership, and it takes leaders to be able to tap into their own vulnerability, to be able to deliver that kind of space for people to come and talk to them. You know, it's quite a lot of work as a leader to be that person yourself, to be able to have those conversations. You know, tough conversations. They're tough. They're called tough conversations. They're tough, and to be able to have those, and to be able to, you know, to take on other people's things when you've got a busy life and you've got children, and it's a really difficult thing. It really needs a strong rise of almost more conscious leaders to take, you know, take ownership of the country and in terms of education and the workplace. We can do small things, so we, you know, obviously we do things at Happiful, and I hope all of our team knows that this is available. I sent out a message over lockdown to say, you know, if anyone needs to speak, then I'm here. But again, well, like you said, it's about the prevention, so teaching things from, you know, from an earlier stage in the relationship, whatever that relationship may be. Yeah, that's the key part. And it's difficult to change, isn't it? It's like realizing the benefit of the change.
It is. It's like investing, isn't it? It's like, you know, if you knew it was a cert, you would get 10 times your investment back, you would never hesitate to do it. But because this is an intangible when it comes to, you know, you can't, it's hard to put a KPI around. I think that's one thing lots of people struggle with, isn't it? It's sort of, well, what are the indicators that I need to measure? You know, things like absenteeism and things like that are always good sort of yardsticks when it comes to recognizing when people are working or not working. You know, that's an easy way to do it. But it's not as simple as that, is it? With things like presenteeism on the rise. And I was just talking to somebody yesterday who's, you know, they've taken a week out because they felt their mental health was just feeling so strained at the moment. And that was it. They just had to have that week. And it's that realization, isn't it, that if we get involved earlier, I've seen lots of people take on more work over the COVID crisis, you know, and try to do more. And it's sort of counterintuitive in many ways. I can understand why, in that self-preservation, protective mode of I need to survive, why people would do it. And it's such a complex thing. And it needs proper steering, you know, and I think that is the key to it, isn't it? Rather than just sort of miscommunication, misinformation. Don't look on social media because all your friends on social media have got an opinion about everything. It's usually, you know, and it's not anything bad about it, but it's just usually uneducated and misinformed. And oh my God, I picked this up and this is the reality and everything's going to go. It has to be driven from a single source, really, as much as we can.
That would be amazing if it was driven from a single source. But right now, where we are that is absolutely not going to happen. And so every person is responsible for themselves. You know, you're, as a person, it's almost giving yourself permission. You know, giving yourself permission to live a different way, to be a different way. You're not happy with your life as it is. It's, you know, you don't have to always do the same thing just because that's the way we were taught. And that was a big lesson for me, you know. But we're all brought up in a certain way, and then it's breaking out of that. It's really tough. It's a real it's not, I don't want to use the word struggle, but it's a breaking free. It hurts. It's painful to grow. We have growing pains you have growing pains as a kid when your body grows. It hurts to grow mentally, to grow beyond what you've known before, and to grow beyond your conditioning. You know, to grow beyond what you think you can do and what you think you can achieve, you know, because of what you've been taught.
It's so true.
Everybody needs to give themselves permission to grow, you know, and until we've got that conscious leadership at the head of the country, which could be, let's face it, we'll probably be dead by the time that happens. You know, we've got to really think, just what can we do? And I love the way that it's explained in terms of a ripple effect. You know, you take responsibility for yourself, you give yourself permission to grow and to learn and to fail and to make mistakes, because that's how you will learn and grow. You give yourself permission to not get it right. Just be kind to yourself. Be compassionate to yourself. Forgive yourself. Give yourself permission to be with yourself, and you watch how that ripples out. You know, you don't even if you're not doing loads of stuff to help other people, you just watch what happens when you are happy with who you are, and watch how that ripples to the people closest to you, and how they then ripple to the people. And it's just, you know, the job, you don't have to worry too much about everyone else. If that's what you're worried about, just think about, how can I be kinder, more compassionate? How can I like myself more? How can I be more in touch with who I am? How can I live a life that I love? Because that is where the magic is.
Yeah, and it's about living that life, isn't it? And that's part of the key to that. And I love this thing about, you know, permission, because when we talk about self-care, I now talk about it as, you know, self-care is about giving yourself that permission to pause. It's really about take care of you first, you know, really make sure you focus on having those opportunities to you know, think about what's going on, to reflect. And I do a lot of self-reflection now. I never used to, you know, when I was running headstrong into the corporate world that I used to work in, and I know millions of people out there who are still in those worlds, you know, you just go from one day to the next. And your plan's scheduled out for months in advance, and you've got all these thoughts that, you know, you never get time to recover. I'm a big fan of this, you know, everything we do needs 3 key things, which is preparation. You know, so we need to be prepared for the conversation, we need to have the conversation, and then we need to recover from the conversation or the event or the action or the activity. You know, it's so important, because we don't give ourselves permission to recover, because we say, oh, I'm too busy, I've got too much going on. Look at people's diaries, you know, I've got a 9 o'clock, a 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, a 12 o'clock, a 1 o'clock, and you go, a whole day, no break. Yeah, but that's just how it works out. It's like, well, no, it shouldn't work out that way. You shouldn't be accepting invitations to things that will overlap on other things. And we run our lives like that. Many people do. I don't now. I'm really clear. I've got breaks between everything I do. I give myself 5 minutes, at least 10 minutes to step away and, you know, breathe. So important.
It's really interesting, actually, that our conversation has steered towards this, because in 2016, when you came to work with us, that's where I was. I was that person who was just, I was at burnout.
Yeah.
You know, I was everything that could be wrong hormonally was wrong. You know, I was physically, everything was just out of whack. I felt very, very overwhelmed. And when you joined, that was basically the start of my recovery, because you came in and took over a lot of those responsibilities, which meant that I could take a step back. And I left the business for a little while, because I recognized that I was at burnout and I needed to recover. And it took a while for me to really recover from that, you know. So it's just really, it's really interesting that we're having the conversation. It was
Full
you that
circle.
came in and sort of enabled me to do that. So thank you for enabling me to have that recovery that I needed.
Well, it was, you know, I think our worlds were meant to be together, you know, in that convergence at that point, and everything was meant to happen for a reason. I'm a big believer in fate and, you know, the reason we're here. And obviously that conversation, this is a conversation that is unscripted. So it was lovely to flow into that as sort of like towards the end. And we are into extra time now, which, you know what, it's like the money's in the meter, so it's not going to run out. But, you know, we will wrap up now, because I know you've got something coming up in a little while, so I want you to have a break in between that, you know, practice what we preach.
Don't worry.
Time to recover and have a proper sort of reset. And I think that's it, isn't it? It's sort of if you don't do it, you will run towards a burnout. And that's how I was. That's how I felt in January 2016 when I lost my job. It was exactly that point. I just felt like I never ever stopped. I never ever recovered. And, you know, and I had jet lag going in there as well, because I was flying between the US and the UK a lot, and, you know, spending weeks in the time in the US, and that's not an excuse. That's just me recognizing, what the hell was I doing, you know, and just saying, honestly, God, God knows where I would be right now if I hadn't have had that moment of crisis at that critical juncture. but thank God it happened.
Exactly, you said thank God for the crisis. You know,
Yeah.
that crisis might be happening in someone's life right now. It might be
Yep.
happening to someone who's listening to us talking.
Yep.
And I think that's the hope. That's almost, you know, what we've both experienced is the crisis.
Yeah.
It happens for a reason. It stops you from burning yourself out so
Yeah.
that you can make a different choice.
Oh, and never be afraid to reinvent yourself. And I found that coming to you guys at Memio Happiful, you know, I was doing jobs I'd never done. I was learning about things I'd never even thought I would be doing, and I loved it because it was energizing me. And you know, it wasn't just a mundane cookie cutter sort of one thing. It was let's do everything and enjoy it. And you know, I have to say, Paul is such a driving force when it comes to doing stuff and getting stuff done, right? And sort of, you know, and really sort of gets very excited. And I love that because I love building on energy of others. Aimi, it's been an absolute pleasure. I'll close. I'll ask you for last words if you've got anything else you'd like to say. I just want to say, as I've already said, you know, I'm so thankful that you came into my life well, you know, we managed to have that moment where we've converged together, and things, you know, have been brilliant for me since then. Of course, there's been lots of other, you know, challenges, because life isn't about it being easy. It was never a pathway that's just been a smooth road of happiness, of course, with other things that I've been through in the last few years, privately as well, personally as well. But thank you. Really, that's it. You're a wonderful human. You really are, and all your family. What I loved about Memio was when I come in and I met the family, and it was really the mum, the dad, the sister, the husband, and everybody, and the children, and so on. But I just wish you all the very best. It's continued success, you know, and the world will be a good place. Any final comments from you?
Final comments. I guess just bringing it back to mental health. If you're struggling with your mental health right now and you feel, just remember that you are important. Everybody, you are an important person, and you can take responsibility and make those choices for yourself if you give yourself permission.
Yeah, wise words, Aimi. Brilliant. You as a counsellor, you're going to be a wonderful resource to help support so many people. As I always do in this, I just want to sort of close and say, if you are struggling, if you do need a safe space to talk, if you are worried about things, especially at this time of year, I know it can be very difficult for many people. Samaritans exists to have private conversations, just to sit and listen. So things that might be worrying you. So please do know you can always reach out to Samaritans any time of the day, 24/7. There will always be a friendly person at the end of the phone to listen to whatever's worrying you. And it doesn't have to be really deep and dark. It could just be things that are just worrying you at the moment. Please do pick up the phone, 116 123. Yeah, please, if you need the service, know that it's there for you. So thank you so much, Aimi. Thank you to everybody that's listening, that stayed with us. And I just want to wish you and the family a very Merry Christmas and a wonderful 2021. Let's hope it's going to be a fantastic year for everybody.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.